Hello, my name is Linda Abraham, and I am the president of Accepted.com and the moderator for today's webinar. I want to welcome all of you to the Art of a Gripping MBA Goals essay to be presented by Cindy Tokamitsu, Accepted.com senior editor. After a successful career as a writer and editor in New York City, Cindy joined Accepted in 1998. Since then, she has helped our clients gain acceptance to top MBA programs like Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, MIT Sloan, Columbia, London Business School, Chicago, Kellogg, Tuck, and many, many others. She has also co-authored with me The Consultant's Guide to MBA Admission, The Finance Professional's Guide to MBA Admission Success, and the eMBA Edge, along with numerous admissions articles, special reports, and e-courses. It's a privilege to hear her thoughts on this most important MBA application. Without further ado, Cindy Tokamitsu and the Art of a Gripping MBA Goals essay.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks everyone for participating in the webinar today. Time is tight, so I'm going to just jump right in, and I'll start with a story. A few years ago, I was talking to a prospective client who happened to be reapplying to Wharton, and that was in the time when Wharton still gave feedback to rejected applicants, so I asked him if he'd gotten the feedback, and he had, and he said that they said, we really liked your application, actually. We thought you were a good fit overall. You were quite well qualified. But venture capital, even with the Wharton MBA, we just didn't feel your goals were feasible, given your background. So how do you avoid this situation? In other words, being qualified, being a good fit, but rejected because your goals don't measure up. I mean, that brings us to why I chose this topic to talk about for nearly an hour, and that's because goals are the backbone of your application. You can get inadequate or goals that don't measure up can actually doom your application. Weak goals can equal a ding. So I'd like to just ask you just briefly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are some ways that goals can not measure up, can be weak. If you have any thoughts, please make a note, and Linda will tell me.
Right, you can do that in the question box on your dashboard. What do you think contributes to weak goals? If I mispronounce names, please, I apologize. I appreciate your understanding. Lack of clarity, lack of experience, not ambitious enough, goals which do not require an MBA. Well, these people are good. Lack of prior experience, lack of proper research on a career path, not enough clarity, already stated, lack of understanding of the desired career path, lack of vision, long-term goals not properly defined, goals that are too far-fetched, unrealistic, as in your example, Cindy. No connection between the background and future goals, no connection between short-term and long-term goals. Lack of a logical bridge between the background and the goals. That already, was pretty close to what somebody had said. Too ambitious. Doesn't need it. Okay, you got a good audience here today.
I have. Well, it's great to hear this because I think I've seen all of these, over all these years, and they're all really true.
They're genuine weaknesses.
They're genuine weaknesses, and I find that weak goals, they kind of fall into two groups. And one is our issues of presentation, where I think I heard clarity a number of times. And I mean, that can be maybe the person's goals aren't clear. That's the problem of substance, or it can be, a problem of presentation where they don't write about it and articulate it clearly. So, sometimes a person's goals are not credible, and that is a problem of not a presentation as much as actual substance. And, sometimes you can have a problem of the substance. The goals may not seem credible, maybe a little tricky, but it is possible with some really good effort to make them credible and clear. So thanks, everybody, for the input. Those are all ways that goals can fall short. And so that's partly why you need to, I really advise that before you sit down and write essays, and don't start thinking about your goals and clarifying your goals when you sit down to write the goals essay. Spend some time beforehand and really just work it through and have your whole goal story in place. It'll be so much more helpful. And, by the way, the example that I gave is not an isolated case. I do see especially the top schools, reapplicants are many, and I talk to them every year, and a lot of times, whether it's getting feedback or my own reading of their earlier application, I can see that the goals often are why someone, or at least a good part of why someone did not get into their target school. So that brings us to a really critical question: what exactly are goals? I think, Linda, this is where we have a little poll, so I'd love to hear what some people's goals are.
I'd like you to select on your screen. You'll see that there are 4 goals listed. What is your post-MBA goal? Please select one: marketing, finance, consulting, or finance or consulting, or finance and consulting, some combination of the two. And okay, so far we have 61% having voted, 69% having voted. Can we get it higher? Great. We have a great group here today. All right. And we see 26% say their goal is marketing, 14% say their goal is finance, 38% say their goal is consulting, and 22% say it's finance or consulting or some combination thereof.
Okay. Well, so that's I'll get back to that. That's very helpful. We'll discuss whether those are goals in a minute, because I want to present some other I would say fairly, typical goals, quote, goals, unquote, that I've heard. I want to move from the sell side to the buy side, or vice versa. I want to shift from technology consulting to investment banking. And I have heard, I want to go into either finance or consulting. These are actually not goals. And I think for the poll, most of those functions are, I would say, the same thing. They're not goals. It's a part of a goal, but that's not the goal. The closest one might be consulting, because that is actually something that you do, so that's an essential part of a goal. But basic goals to right now, whether we're talking about short-term or long-term goals, there are a couple of critical elements that go into a goal. And without that, it just simply isn't a goal. A goal is not something you want. It's not a function you imagine being in. It's something you plan to do, to accomplish, to make happen. So therefore, you need to be specific. Any goal to really, earn that word goal, to earn that moniker, has to have at least the industry and the function, at the very least. And then add to that, after you kind of work that out, then do the action part. What are you going to do? So those, whether again your short-term or your long-term goals, these are the 3 core elements that your goals should have. Now, I'll add a caution at this point, a couple of cautions. Short-term goals tend to be a formative step for most people. So it's very easy to leave out the action part, the do part, what you're really going to accomplish, make happen. A lot of times people gravitate to discussing short-term goals exclusively in terms of what they're going to learn, what they're going to experience they'll gain, contacts they'll make. That's all, that can be in there. But I see very often that people don't say a word, literally, about what they're actually going to do and accomplish in that short-term goal. And so I want to just put that out there right now, that should be there for the short-term goal as well. Second caution, and I think some of you mentioned this in the first question, your goals really must require the benefits of an MBA. And I think of someone I worked with a couple of years ago who wanted to open a restaurant, and certainly the MBA learning can be helpful. But MBA can be helpful in running your own, household management as well. I mean, you don't need the MBA for these things, and you really should have goals that require the MBA, particularly for the top programs. They really want to see that people need to use what they have to offer, So I'll give you a couple of examples of, just some basic goals that contain these elements. I plan to return to operations, but work at a higher decision-making level, such as senior operations manager in an East Asian semiconductor firm or a related industry. In this role, I would oversee regional operations and supply chain and manage various levels of professionals. Or another example, which is actually common, and there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody might say, currently I'm a BPR consultant. I plan to shift to strategy consulting, working for a top global firm such as Bain or McKinsey, ideally focusing on clients in the pharma biomedical space. I'd like to help them set up operations in Eastern Europe. So you can see how these goals incorporate industry, function, and action, what the person's actually going to do, what their work will consist of. So if you have that and you articulate those things well in your essay, most likely the admissions committees will be thinking, good, that's nice, check, that qualifies, that's acceptable. However, don't you really want the admissions committee to be a little more enthusiastic than that? How would you like to make them think, wow? How would you like to have them think as they're reading, gosh, it would be great if she would do that. That's exciting. I would love to see him do that. Well, there's a way to achieve that kind of reaction. And I call it goals plus, and Linda Abraham actually came up with the wonderful phrase, goals on steroids. So there are a few more elements that make this up, but it's also tends to be, it actually may end up making the goals essay process easier because there are some points in here and some elements that are just so intuitive to your story that, it'll actually have that extra benefit. So those three elements are experience, developing your goals from your experience, describing your motivation for your goals, and your vision for your goals. Again, experience, motivation, and vision. I'm going to briefly read a paragraph. It's from a fictional Harvard career vision essay. I wrote the essay myself. It was for a fictional character in my ebook called Consultant's Guide to MBA Admissions. And just to give an example, because these are somewhat, experience is experience, but motivation and vision can be a little bit of abstract terms. So, I think it would be helpful to see how those really come together. I also want to mention that these words, experience, motivation, and vision, they're three separate words, but in reality, in your life and in your essays as well, they really are going to be combined and integrated. So, and again, I hope this example shows that. So I'll read this paragraph. Last year, when I was in Taiwan advising a global financial services company on consolidating its Asia strategy, I found myself thinking what a shame it was that my relationship with the client proved responsive rather than proactive. With my knowledge of the region's changing demographic and logistical realities, I could have recommended strategic opportunities a year ago to prevent the client from getting bogged down in redundant acquisitions and incompatible markets. Following that experience, I envisioned a new consulting paradigm resembling primary care medicine based on a long-term prevention-focused relationship between the consultant and the client. So let's walk through these three elements with this example in mind and see how they actually play out. Anchoring the goals and experience. Well, the person, this character, basically, fictional character, talks about he sets the scene, his experience, the consulting, what he was doing, a particular project. So that's really rooting it in experience, and hopefully, you think that it made it vivid and engaging as well as giving it credibility. The next element, motivation, is your motivation for choosing your goals. So I like to look at motivation as the sort of moment that you really become engaged or captivated. It's sort of that aha moment when you recognize a need or see an opportunity, and it's something also that you want, that kind of that you can relate to because of your interests or your skills or your talents or whatever. So in this case, that moment was as he was going through this project and started to reflect, seeing that he could have maybe had some better input or had more beneficial and proactive input earlier, if only, and then that gets him thinking about this goal for, that he'll develop in terms of a new consulting paradigm. So that's the motivation. And then last but not least, the vision. The vision is the impact of your achieving your goals or working on your goals beyond the direct outcome. So in this case, obviously, if you're a consultant, you want to help your client's business, you want to succeed on the project and then help your own consulting company's business. Those are the immediate outcomes. But some additional outcomes could be the more robust relationship for consultants and businesses, or the model that this person envisions will encourage businesses to think long term. So these are kind of constructive, broader impacts than just the immediate outcome and the specific outcome. I think that, hopefully it's clear how these can really come together to totally lift an essay to a level that's much more vivid and engaging, and also, again, intuitive, because you really are going back to your own story there. So I have also identified a few other advantages of this goals plus approach or goals on steroid approach, and I'd like to know if you have any thoughts of some other benefits that this approach offers. I'll just toss that question out there quickly because
you can answer in your question box. Cindy, could you just repeat the question?
Sure. My question is, after having worked with this approach for a while, I've identified some other benefits of it aside from what I've said in terms of the credibility and engaging the AdCom. I'd like to know if they had any thoughts about some other benefits of using this approach.
Okay. Audience member, applicants, what other benefits would you see in using this approach? And
adding the vision.
Adding the vision.
And experience and
experience
motivation.
Elements, motivation. Okay. Elise, I think, hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Differentiation from other candidates. Mm-hmm. Michael clarifies goals. Athens makes it more you and unique. Mm-hmm. Emma, clarity. Mm-hmm. Rajesh brings more clarity. Kushagra, standing out from the crowd. Paul shows the passion. Your essay has more personality tied to your. Okay, these, again, you have a great audience here today. This is
great, and I appreciate it. And the thing is, if you do this, everyone is right.
Right. Bobby says it shows that the candidate knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
Dave, it's mental prep for an interview, helpful for the interview.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that one.
Shows how your goal helps the MBA program create something lasting, basically that you're going to be a credit to the school. Mm-hmm. Forces you to ask deeper questions, shows you have put in thought. Okay, I think I got it.
All of the above. I mean, I would say, in my words, I'll sum it up, but I think everyone has said it in multiple ways. The experiential basis enhances the credibility. It's not just something you're saying, but you really see the roots of it. You see that thing rooted in your life. Number two, this is one, I found one that nobody said, I think. It's so simple, it's easy to overlook. It tells a story. So most of the goals essays are exposition, and you're as the reader, you're reading a lot of, expository stuff, explanations, and sort of justifications. How refreshing to come upon a story. I can't tell you. It really is. It just makes it so much more engaging, and you're conveying all the same information that you need to convey, but it just naturally creates a story. And last but not least, I think this is, or certainly not least, but this is the one that most people were giving some variations on. It inherently differentiates you. How much do people struggle with the issue of differentiation? I just can't even, begin to express. It's just such a challenge and such a sort of obstacle to so many people. Looking for this, things and you kind of don't have to do that if you do this. It just not only does it differentiate you, but it saves you a lot of grief because it happens naturally. It happens inherently.
It happens sincerely and with authenticity.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it really comes through. So it's your story. And because you'll be giving it those details, if you're that consultant going into, from going into BPR to strategy consultant, it's a very common pathway, but when you tell your story, it's going to be completely unlike anyone else's. So that's some of the benefits, and thank you, everyone, for your excellent input on that. So we've talked about some of the components of the goals, what make up goals, what comprises goals, and what you have to have, and then what additionally you should have or can benefit by having. Let's go a little bit into the mechanics of this breaking down your goals and answering goals essays. So you'll be starting your goals essays ideally with three levels of goals worked out. Short-term goals, which is immediately post-MBA to about 2 years later. Intermediate goals, which is roughly 2 to 5 years post-MBA. And long-term is the rest. I think when you look at almost any essay question, you will not see intermediate goals. Most of them will either ask for short-term or long-term or both. I think that, for your own sake, just for your own sort of working out your goals purposes, looking at the intermediate goals as a sort of pathway, how you're going to get from your short-term goal to your long-term goal. I think that is going to be, it'll be more important for some schools' goals essays than others, the how part of it, but when it's important, as for Columbia, it's really important. So, a lot of times, working out that intermediate and thinking about it as how is going to avoid the scenario that I see very often, which is, you're either a consultant or you're a manager and you're going along in your short-term goal very nicely, and then it's your long-term goal and you're setting up a company somewhere. And it's kind of like, okay, but, one day you're a consultant and the next day you're running, you're starting up something, and it's sort of, what happens in the meantime? How does one flow into the other? So, another way to look at the intermediate goals is not so much necessarily about a time frame, but sort of that flow from the short term to the long term. So I would say, for obvious reasons, short-term goals really should be, most of the time, and I say 95% of the time, they should be the most specific. They should include the elements that we've already talked about, along with a few other elements. The short-term goals, you really want to also include examples, aside from your industry function and possibly geography, and the kind of goals plus elements. You also want to include examples of the types of organization that you want to possibly join. So you wouldn't just say, I want to go into a consulting firm with global reach, but you'd say, such as Boston Consulting Group or Bain, or you'd do that. You don't have to, it's important to get the wording right there. You don't want to say, I'm going to work for Bain. That's obviously would be ridiculous to say, unless you have a pretty concrete offer in writing. But showing familiarity and using specifics makes you come across as more focused and serious. Similarly, you'd want to have some examples of position titles. So people tend to forget this a lot. Like, they just want to join this company, and sort of then they talk about maybe doing, like, they'll be in a certain function. So if you want to be doing marketing in a consumer goods company post-MBA, well, what are some examples of titles in that role? What role would you imagine yourself being in at, say, Procter & Gamble or at another company? Again, you don't have to say, I'm going to be a, marketing manager for a certain region at this company, but to show that you know how these companies work, what the titles are in some representative companies, what those functions do, how it all works. That really is important to show that you are informed, and you are prepared to that you have the knowledge that you need to prepare for that. If you can't describe the function that you're targeting, then how are you going to know what courses to take to prepare for it? So the AdCom will really appreciate and note these specifics of this level. I mentioned before the pitfall in the short-term goal of only talking about what you want to do there in terms of what you get out of it. Don't forget to add and actually emphasize what you will accomplish in this role for your company or for the clients. What you expect to do when you go to work in the morning, what your work will consist of, as well as what you want to learn and how you want to grow. So just that's particularly for the short-term goal, that's something to be aware of. As you describe successive steps, maybe 2 or 3 steps out, heading down towards the future, that you need a little less detail in each, just because naturally, the further out you project, the less certain things you are. The less certain things are both for you personally and also for the world in general. So there's no need to go beyond what's practical. I really suggest not having a very detailed, vision for, 20 or 30 years down the road because, nobody really knows. It would be a dream. It wouldn't be a goal at that point. So, kind of just be realistic. Last but not least, when you're looking at, for whatever phase you're talking about, consider the circumstances of the industry or sometimes the geography. A lot of times, certain industries are areas are in a great deal of flux. There's some uncertainty in that particular. Healthcare might be one now. Energy, there are many others. I guess probably all of them these days. But that can be reflected in your goals too. Just acknowledging it, but also if you're talking about goals now, and by the time you'll actually be doing that, even your soonest goal is still probably almost 3 years from when you're writing. If it really is uncertain what that industry is going to look like in 3 years, and that's kind of well understood, then that's also something you should probably address somehow. So, with that covered, let's move on to targeting specific goals questions. Different sets of essay questions will emphasize different aspects of goals. There'll be different lengths. They'll even have different tones. Most of them will emphasize short-term goals. Many will ask about short and long-term goals. Occasionally, you'll get some that really only ask for what is your ultimate goal, and so they should all be treated differently. And some don't even use the word goal, but they'll say vision or objective or aspirations. So all with their own little nuance. So let's walk through a few examples. Linda, did you have a question?
I was just asking if you're going to advance the slide.
Oh, I am. Getting there. Right. Harvard. Okay. So let's look at Harvard's question, which is, what is your career vision and why is this choice meaningful to you? That's a 300-word question. Then we have Duke. Describe your vision for your career and your inspiration for pursuing this career path. Now, if you look at those two questions, they seem essentially identical in meaning. Just the kind of wording they use, and I focus on career vision and then your motivation or why is it meaningful. However, they're very different essays because Duke is literally twice as long, maybe even more, than Harvard. So how you approach that is going to be quite different. Columbia is also quite different from those. What are your short-term and long-term post-MBA goals? How will Columbia Business School help you achieve those goals? And then there's Wharton, this year with a 300-word question. What are your professional objectives? So I think you can see how Columbia's and Wharton's are just the tone is so different from Harvard and Duke. Columbia and Wharton are very down to earth, very focused, very concrete, not discussing motivations and all kinds of stuff and vision, goals, objectives, how will Columbia help you, So your essays should reflect, aside from just answering the question in terms of what the words say, you should also look at the tone a little bit and sort of develop your essay accordingly realizing that the tone as well as the content of the question reflects the school. In other words, in answering the question, be guided by the question. I'm sure you'll no doubt you'll be adapting goals essays. Once you have a very good basic model, it makes sense to adapt it. But really adapt. Do what you have to do and be guided by the question. So that raises a question. Can you bring in other elements? It's interesting that none of these goals questions that I just happened to select to read ask about your career. That's coincidental. Some do. For example, Kellogg's goals question asks you to summarize your career progress or something along those lines, and that's also pretty common. So people will often ask me. They don't say anything about my career, but can I still bring it in? And the answer is yes, as long as you are guided by the question. So if they don't ask about your career, that doesn't mean that you can't say a word about it. It just means that those few words that you choose to say should be very directly related to your goals. It should not be a career summary. I give as an example the essay that I read a portion of earlier where he does bring in his experience, but you never feel like you're getting a career summary, and you're not, but that experience is really just setting the scene for the actual goals, and then saying, and it's literally like two sentences basically, focusing just on the career. It's like no more than that out of a 400-word essay. So yes, you can bring in your career and possibly other things if it's not asked for, but again, if you're guided by the question, you'll have the sense to do it in an appropriate proportion and in a manner that's relevant. I'd also like to point out, actually, I recently have identified a pitfall of some of the essays that use the word vision. And I'm wondering if anybody, such as the Harvards or Dukes, and I'm wondering if anybody has an idea of what a pitfall could be for that kind of essay question. Such as Harvard's, what is your career vision?
And take a guess, what would be the pitfall of the vision? Okay, Paul suggests vision without specifics.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I mean,
right, for that essay, not being specific. Yeah.
Right. I think it's tricky that word vision sort of, to some people it sort of gives you the idea that it can be hazy. Sort of, I like the image of kind of like some distant horizon. That you don't have to be specific, you don't have to be concrete. It's just sort of dreamy. Don't fall for that, or don't fall into that like little trap if you see that word. And again, I refer back to that essay that I read a portion from. That's answering the career vision essay, but it's very concrete and specific. And I think also for those essays, if you refer back to the definition of vision that we gave earlier, where it's not just something, personal and sort of, wondrous and dreamlike, but it's actually simply a broader outcome than the immediate outcome of your actions, then that also helps you be specific and answer that question.
Great.
So often the goals essay will ask you why you want an MBA or why you want to attend a particular program. And these discussions also should link back directly to your goals. They should flow from your goals, actually. So in discussing the program, obviously avoid, the trite phrases such as esteemed professors and reputable program and such. But more than that, don't just list the things that are appealing to you about the program. Select a few that are both the most important to you and relevant to your goals, and discuss them in a little more substantial way. That really, it's a tough thing to do. This is, in many ways, I think, strangely enough, the hardest part of the essay, just to have something. It's because it will seem so obvious, in some ways, of why this particular program or that program is really great. And how are you going to say something fresh? Well, I wouldn't so much worry about saying something that no one else has ever said. You probably won't, in terms of some idea that's never been said before, but just going back to your own experience. So if you like, the small collaborative atmosphere of a particular school, that's nice. But then say something about it. Don't just say that you like it. Talk about a time when you had that experience and how you grew from it. Or conversely, you can talk about how you've only been in like big companies, big schools, and you really are dying to just experience this other type of environment. I mean, there are, just having something to say and really continuing to illuminate yourself through your discussion of why the school is really, really great. Also, if you can, weave in a discussion of a school visit or interactions with students and alumni. That's really great. But similarly, don't just say that you visited and it was fantastic, or don't just say that you talked to these various people and they were fantastic. If you mention it, bring in a little point that somebody maybe said. And it doesn't have to be the biggest deal, but just something that struck you, that left an impression, and why. It just makes a huge difference when you can do this in the essays. So to the extent possible, I highly recommend it. Last but not least, in this section, I'd like to present a possible structure. I'm not saying it's the beginning, and the end of how to write a goals essay. It's simply something I've found very, very helpful over many years as a foundational point or a starting point. And the reason is because it's contextual and intuitive. So, I'll just say, it really is just, I'm sharing it with the idea that it's there if you want it. If it really doesn't work for you, that's fine. I'm not saying it should be used necessarily, but I'll just quickly walk through why I think it works, and hopefully maybe that'll be helpful. Starts with the introduction, and the purpose of the introduction is to engage the reader. And then move that reader right into the essay. So don't agonize it or feel like you've got to pour a ton of content in there. Obviously, it has to be relevant to the essay, but that really is just like, I tell people that is the entrance ramp to the throughway, that introduction. In a short essay, it does not need to be a separate paragraph. It can be a one-sentence introduction that just weaves then right into the actual paragraph of your main content. Relevant background. So here,
Can I ask a question on the intro?
Sure.
Because I know so many times people think introductions and they kind of think about their high school writing classes, and it ends up being this declarative sentence, or worse, it could be something like I was born in, or I came from, or I want to be a consultant because.
Or don't you have to present the theme?
Yes.
Okay. Actually,
touch on that for a second.
Yeah, I really do, because all of those. Probably all the ways you've been taught to write introductions, if it's like that, like you have to introduce your theme, or you're a consultant and you're from Italy and whatever. Those are all like the ways you should not start your essay. It can be you just again with the goal of engaging the reader immediately. Think a great way to start is with a brief anecdote. An anecdote can be a one-sentence thing. It doesn't have to be a long story. An anecdote, maybe some interesting facts about your industry or your business function, or a region that you're committed to working in, or a quote from somewhere that's particularly relevant to your goals. I mean, there are a number of ways that you can have an engaging introduction, but really think about it as engaging the reader and then just moving quickly into the content. So that having that, I know from reading many, many, many essays, and sometimes many, many essays in a day, I know how, to start competently, which is not badly, but it's just competently, is that sort of present like the theme and sort of have, introduce yourself in terms of, I'm so-and-so from this country and in that business, and the reader feels, okay, I'm reading this essay, I'm doing my job. Now, it's good, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, going back to that goals plus, you want to make them not read because it's their job to read. You want to actually get them to want to read that essay just for the fun of reading it. And you want to get them to go from one sentence to the next just because they're engaged, because they're gripped by what they're reading. And so here's another way, along with some of the other points I mentioned earlier, to do that by using a good introduction. So then you have your relevant background. And the background, again, can be a couple of sentences, if it's not really part of the essay question, such as the example that I gave. I'll keep going back to that because that's an example of just a couple of sentences up front. That also, if it's a longer, or maybe a paragraph, if it's a required part of the essay, that's fine too, obviously. But then the great thing about this is, you're writing about whichever approach, whether it's shorter or longer, you will be discussing things in your background that are relevant to your goals and that give rise to your goals if you use the method that we discussed earlier. So then you arrive at your goals. You have already created a context, so then you discuss your goals. They arise out of that relevant background, and you discuss your goals as the question warrants. So then out of your goals flow needs or arise needs. Maybe it's obviously a need to learn certain things that you don't know, that you need to know to succeed in your goals. It may also be other needs, such as need to develop certain contacts in certain industries, or to gain experience overseas in a global trek or something. So your goals give rise to needs that you identify, by the way, your learning needs and other needs, and then that takes you very naturally into why the MBA and why that school, because then you talk about how the MBA and the school meet those needs, the needs that you have identified towards the end of your goal, either towards the end of your goals or in the beginning of this section. But so that's a very intuitive and logical way that I've just found it works great most of the time. So there it is, if it's helpful to you. And again, the conclusion, we should have a number 5 there, conclusion. It's the exit ramp. Okay? It can be one sentence in a short essay or a short paragraph in a longer essay. So I'm going to move on to a couple of quicker elements. We're very kind of pressed for time, so Linda, I'm going to go through these quickly if that's okay.
Sure.
Even quicker. And developing, I'd like to briefly discuss a plan B, okay? You think you're done at this point, but actually there's a couple of little things that are going to make a big difference. So one is a plan B. We have heard directly from admissions committee directors at top schools, both this year and last year, that they really they understand how volatile the economy and industries are right now. So, you may have a very solid plan for your short-term goal may be great. By the way, I should clarify, plan B for your short-term goals. Plan B for your short-term goals is an alternate way to get to your long-term goals. Okay? It's just simply facing reality that, as solid as your plan may be, as well prepared and as great as of a potential or as marketable as you likely, may be for that particular role, still there's so much uncertainty. I mean, all you have to do is think a couple of years ago for people who were, in B school, planning to go into certain industries when the economy tanked, So that can happen, and it does happen, and so having a plan B will just help you appear to the admissions committee to be realistic, to be adaptable, to be understanding, just the reality that we're all living in right now. And particularly, there are two groups particularly benefit from this. It's people who are people who are targeting difficult to enter industries, and people who are changing careers. The plan B, most of the time, is not a big deal. It's one sentence. It can be one sentence, too. That's why I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. It should not detract from your short-term goals. It should not be half the essay or the other half of your short-term goals. Nothing like that. I'll give you a brief example. Here's an example of a plan B, literally a one sentence. In the essay you've said, or the applicant has said, your long-term goal is to be CIO or CTO in a particular industry. You want your desired path for that is to pursue a management position in that industry, technology management, after MBA. Plan B might be, okay, if that position isn't feasible, you also would accept a technology strategy consulting role as another means. It wouldn't be what you maybe want to do first and foremost, but that would be also another viable path, get you engaged in the industry, and then get you on track for your long-term goals. So that's Plan B point. And my last point is a little bit of enhancement can go a long way in terms of research, where we've already discussed how you can, all the things to write about you and how, your goals and your needs and et cetera. This is a little bit of just adding some interesting tidbits about your industry, your function, or the geographical area that you're interested in working in. It'll enhance the credibility of your goals. It can just be a very refreshing little addition to the essay for the reader. It shows a couple of things about you. It shows that you're resourceful. It shows that you're engaged. I think it's absolutely essential for career changers, but it certainly enhances any essay. So I'm going to now conclude and just like to encourage you to take a look at our website and our services. I've said a lot of I've just recently, said a lot of things such as do this, don't do that, should do, shouldn't do, etc. Well, if you'd like some collaboration and guidance along that process, we're here. We offer a number of services that can help you with all of those steps. So please take a look. And last but not least, our special offer for everyone who's here today is a 15-minute free consultation, either a critique of one goals essay or a consultation on your goals essay strategy. So it would be with me to the extent that, if time permits, and, if it's not feasible for me to work with everybody or to talk to everybody who signs up, then other editors that accepted will be happy to participate as well. So sorry for a little rush at the end, but I'd love to take any questions now.
Right. Cindy, I really want to thank you for this fantastic presentation, and I want to reiterate the offer. If you sign up on November 18th, you can receive a free critique of one goals essay or discuss your goals essay strategy and also learn more about accepted services. Just click on the link in the slide. We'll leave it up, and it will open the form. Don't leave the webinar, though. You can fill it out after the webinar. Cindy personally will do as many of these critiques as she can. So if you sign up sooner, you are more likely to get to talk to Cindy herself. If not, then other Accept.com editors will be happy to work with you. Now for your questions. There have been several. I think the first one posted early on in the webinar was from Cheryl. What if you are changing career paths and your background is not specifically in business? And there have been several along this line, one from somebody in the military, others making other career changes. So I'm going to let Cindy address the question in terms of the MBA goals. I also want to point out that I did a webinar several months ago called MBA Catalyst for Career Change. The recording is now on demand, so you can go and review that. But I also addressed that question there. But right now, why don't we hear what Cindy has to say in terms of your MBA goals essay?
Sure. Okay. So if you're coming from I think you mentioned that there are particular people coming from a non-necessarily business background. So first of all, the good thing is that pretty much all AdComs that I know welcome and expect career changers. So but being a career changer does put an extra burden on you that you have to build that bridge from where you are to where you want to go. The key is showing that you are informed about your career path. If you do not have direct experience in business, or business is very broad, but if you do not have a direct experience in the whatever industry and function you say you want to pursue, well, that area, what I was just discussing a moment ago about research becomes very important. If you are very proactive and thoughtful and do informational interviews and do a lot of research, that's one way to demonstrate that you're making an informed decision. Also, by writing about it, if you do that, you'll be able to discuss what the needs are for the particular role you expect to fulfill, showing that you understand what skills you will need, what people skills, technical skills, or quantitative skills, just what kind of knowledge you need about certain regions or aspects of business, and showing that about that role and what you need, and then, that will show that you really understand it and you're prepared to develop along those lines. Also, you may not have had personal exposure in terms of experience, but, whether you, again, informational interviews are a great way to gain some insight and to talk about that. If you do that, talk about it in the essay. Talk about doing informational interviews. That will really show a lot of initiative and engagement. And also, this will obviously, I think, give some rich anecdotes as well. Go to industry, possibly if there are any, associations that have that they will often welcome newcomers and also put you in touch with people in the industry. So I would say just do everything you can to show that and then also that's where your motivation and those things that I was discussing in Goals Plus comes in. What is your motivation? If you really make that very clear and show how you became motivated and what that motivation is and what you want to accomplish, I think all of those things will help make that help you develop credible goals out of this big transition.
Whether you're coming from the military or from not-for-profit or simply a different area of business, if you're trying to change careers, I think Cindy's point about anchoring your goals in your past experience, even if it isn't classically business experience. If you're in the military, presumably you have tremendous experience with operations and complex operations.
And leadership.
Leadership, absolutely. And if you're in not-for-profit, then maybe it's marketing and sales, especially if you're involved in fundraising. So you're going to have to pick the relevant parts of your past experience and show how they will be valuable in a business context, because not only the business school is going to be looking for that, but future employers. Now, we have time for one more question, and we're going to have to make it a quick question, and that is there are several people who asked, what should the exit ramp be? What should the conclusion contain? And should the conclusion refer back to the engaging opening? And is that part of the gripping goals essay? This is for several people.
Right. Okay, well, that's good. I mean, the exit ramp can be, often it can circle back. If you can do that, kind of gracefully and naturally, I think it's wonderful.
I'm a big believer in it.
Yeah, I would say the thing is, don't strain over it too. The thing you don't want to do is to have a long conclusion that's redundant of the essay. You want to just I look at it as a summary of the main point. Ideally, it's a summary in some way of the main point, but with a fresh slant or angle to it. So it's really going to be different for each essay. Also, for longer essays, you will have a short concluding paragraph, and it's easier to refer back to the opening there. For very short essays, if we're talking like a 300, 400-word goals essay, a lot of times it actually, and Linda, if you differ with me on this, tell me, because you may.
Sure.
A lot of times, but a lot of times, I think that just wrapping up the particular discussion that you're having in a graceful way, that one last sentence, making it just a kind of broader like a kind of graceful concluding sentence rather than a kind of formal conclusion often works just as well. Only because in the short essay, you don't have words to spare, and, I say you don't have words to spare just on form. You really don't want to put it all into substance. So I almost don't, I hate to say it, but I really don't worry about it that much for like a 300, 400-word essay. I just really try to make that last sentence somehow a little more impactful and sort of, stylistically almost, and rather than having any particular formula for it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I understand that some of you are having difficulty clicking on the link for the goals form, so I just posted the URL, and now it is clickable in your chat windows, but it is info.accepted.com/MBA-goals. Again, that's info.accepted.com/MBA-goals. Obviously, you see it in front of your screen, even if you can't click on it, and I don't know why it's not clickable. All right. In that case, we'll send out an email to everybody, and we'll also probably post it on the blog. But you will get a questionnaire on the way out. Please do respond to it, and yes, you can all criticize us for the bad link. That I already know about. And other than that, I want to thank you again for your outstanding participation today, and to thank Cindy for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. I hope it really helps you with your applications. Good luck to all of you. Thank
Good luck,
you so
definitely.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.